old, and for the longest time I believed patience was the purest proof of love. Looking back now, I realize it nearly destroyed me. When I first met Scott, I thought he was magnetic. He had this way of filling a room without trying. Confident, opinionated, quick-witted. Compared to my last relationship, which had been quiet and distant, Scott felt like stepping into a heat wave after months of gray winter. His energy was intoxicating, and I mistook it for depth. At the start, he made me feel like I was truly seen. He asked about my dreams, laughed at my sarcasm, even teased me about being too serious. I thought that meant he cherished me, but very soon the warmth turned into something else. It began subtly. If I told him, "Hey, you're being too sensitive. Are you really trying to police my personality?" I'd sit there frozen, wondering if I was overreacting. He was so quick, so sure of himself. Every concern I raised got reshaped into my flaw. I became the one accused of being controlling, fragile, or his favorite word, toxic. And he had the vocabulary of a therapist. He talked endlessly about growth boundaries, emotional safety, but those concepts always bent around him. If Scott wanted space, I was expected to respect it. If I needed reassurance, I was suddenly clingy and emotional. I kept convincing myself this was love's test, that patience meant standing by someone even when they were hard to love. I told myself his arrogance was armor, his dismissiveness, just immaturity. So I gave and gave and gave. I was there through his job, changes his fights with his friends. I carried boxes when he moved apartments at short notice. I swallowed the little humiliations, like when he rolled his eyes at my work, or when he mocked me for wanting a quiet night in while he wanted to party. I even tolerated the flirting. He'd joke with waitresses, exchange numbers with women at the gym, and dismiss it as harmless. If I dared to protest, I was insecure. The worst wasn't the fights. It was the erosion. The way he made me feel smaller every day, like I should be grateful to have him. And when I tried to push back, he would smirk and say some version of, "Most women would kill to have me." "You think anyone else will put up with your intensity?" I began doubting myself. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe love meant biting my tongue, walking on eggshells, proving I wasn't too much. But the silence inside me grew heavier. And then came the late nights. Scott would disappear for hours, claiming he needed to clear his head. Gym sessions that stretched to 5 hours. A friend from yoga, he swore, was just a casual acquaintance. I wasn't naive. I knew what those signs meant. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted to give him one last chance to prove me wrong. Because as much as he chipped away at me, some part of me still clung to the Scott I thought I knew. That man, the one who made me laugh until my ribs ached, hadn't been around in a long time. But I hadn't yet admitted he was gone. Still in the quiet of my apartment, lying alone on a bed that suddenly felt colder than stone, I whispered to myself, a truth I could no longer ignore. Something is already broken, and it won't heal on its own. The distance grew thicker between us like fog seeping into every corner of the apartment. Scott's smiles felt practiced, his touch distracted. He started coming home late, smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, and his phone never left his hand. "Long night at the gym," he'd say, tossing his bag in the corner, his voice casual, his eyes elsewhere. I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe him, but in the pit of my stomach I already knew. I tried to keep the peace, told myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was being paranoid, like he always accused me of. But love, real love, shouldn't feel like second-guessing every breath you take. One Thursday night, fate made the choice for me. Scott was in the shower, steam fogging the bathroom door, when a notification lit up his laptop on the coffee table. A preview of a message. The words burned into me before I could even look away. "Last night was insane. I can't stop thinking about you." From her. My chest went hollow. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't me being sensitive. It was betrayal, plain as day, sitting on his screen. I didn't even scroll further. I didn't need to. The preview was enough to shatter whatever fragile hope I had been clinging to. When he walked out, towel draped carelessly around his waist, he caught me staring at the floor. He smirked, assuming he'd just walk past me like nothing was wrong. Instead, I looked up and asked, my voice steady, too steady. "How long has it been with her, Scott?" He froze, just for a second, but I saw it, that flicker of calculation behind his eyes. Then, smooth as ever, he rolled them and scoffed. "You really need to get over this paranoia." I swallowed. "Don't lie, I saw the message." And then instead of shame, instead of guilt, he smirked. Smirked. "You're so emotionally unsafe, Wanda. The fact that you're hurt by this just proves how toxic you are." I felt my blood run cold. He cheated, and somehow I was the abuser. Somehow my hurt was the crime. He folded his arms, leaning against the counter like this was a debate he had already won. You've always been like this. Controlling. Fragile. Maybe if you were more emotionally evolved, I wouldn't have needed to find connection elsewhere. I blinked slowly, my anger sharpening into something clearer than rage. You mean cheat, I said flatly. He laughed under his breath. No, Wanda. I mean actually feel seen. Something you've never managed to do no matter how hard you tried to fix me. Something inside me snapped. Not with screaming, not with tears, with clarity. You're not deep, Scott, I said, standing to face him. My voice didn't shake. You're not evolved. You're just a narcissist with good vocabulary. His smirk faltered. Excuse me. You cheat, then call me toxic for having a normal reaction. You blame me for your choices. You use therapy language like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. But you're not healing. You're hiding. He blinked. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw him lose his footing. I took a step closer. I've walked on eggshells for too long. I've bent myself into silence. I've swallowed humiliation just to keep this alive. And now you cheat, and somehow that's my fault too. He crossed his arms again, defensive. You're twisting things. You always do this. No, I said, my voice low, but sure. This is the first time I'm seeing things clearly. And I'm done. The words landed like a slap. His smirk slipped completely. He looked at me. Really looked at me, as if he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. You don't mean that, he muttered almost to himself. But I did. You can pack your things tonight. I want you out by morning. His face went blank. Then the sneer returned weak this time. You're seriously kicking me out over this. You'll regret it. You'll crawl back once you realize what you've lost. I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a spare suitcase, and set it beside him. The thud echoed between us. Start packing, Scott. For a moment, he just stared at me stunned that I hadn't broken down, hadn't begged, hadn't given him another chance to twist the knife. Finally, he muttered, Wow, you really are pathetic. Then leaving should be easy for you, I replied. His jaw clenched. He shook his head, grabbed the suitcase, and began throwing clothes in silence. Around midnight, he walked out the door, muttering that he was going to be so much happier anyway. When the door shut behind him, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. For the first time in over a year, my apartment felt like mine again. And I didn't cry, not even once. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sensation. Not dread, not that familiar knot in my stomach, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like oxygen after you've been choking for too long. No icy silence from across the bed, no passive-aggressive sighs over coffee, no emotional landmines waiting for me to step on. Just silence, pure unfiltered quiet. I stripped the bed, I washed the sheets, I threw away the candles he insisted on lighting during every full moon, some ritual he swore made him feel grounded. I opened every window and let the air rush in. It was symbolic, maybe even dramatic, but it mattered. The air smelled different without him cleaner, fresher mine. I blocked his number, muted his socials, not to punish him, but to protect myself. I didn't want his voice in my head anymore, not even digitally. For the next few days, I kept it simple. I worked, I cooked for myself. I went to the gym, not the half-hearted workouts I used to do after managing his drama, but real workouts, where sweat actually felt like release. I called Jamie a friend Scott never liked. When I told him we broke up, he laughed and said, Finally. Took you long enough. That guy was a walking red flag wrapped in cologne. He wasn't wrong. By day 3, I felt lighter. Not healed, but clear. For the first time in months, I wasn't second-guessing myself. I wasn't wondering how I could be better to make someone stay. I finally understood it was never about me. Scott just needed someone to project his chaos onto, and I had played that role too well. On the evening of day 4, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about how everything happened. I hope you're okay. No name, no acknowledgement of what he did, just how everything happened. I didn't reply. I deleted it. The next morning, a burner account messaged me on Instagram. I know I hurt you. I'm not asking for anything, but I really miss the way we used to talk. I knew exactly who it was. I ignored that too. By day 6, he got bolder. This time, a longer message from a second number, probably his work phone. I messed up. I let someone get in my head, and I hurt the only person who cared about me. She wasn't who I thought she was. She ghosted me. I see now I threw away something real. Please, Wanda, can we just talk? I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. My heart thudded in my chest, not out of longing, but out of fear of my own weakness. Because part of me still remembered the Scott I thought he was. But I didn't reply. That evening, as I sat curled up on my couch with a book, I heard it. A knock at the door. I froze. Peeking through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was him, standing there in the hallway, shifting nervously, fiddling with his keys. For a second, I thought he might leave, but then, knock, knock, knock. Wanda, his voice came soft, almost pleading through the wood. I'm not here to fight. I just want to talk. Please. My hand tightened around the doorknob. I didn't open it. He waited. Then his voice cracked softer this time. You were always the only one who tried with me. I didn't see it before. I do now. I'm sorry. The words slid under the door like smoke. For a moment, my heart betrayed me. I felt the urge to open it, to look him in the eyes, to search for a trace of the man I once loved. But I stayed silent. Minutes passed. His sigh echoed down the hall, followed by retreating footsteps. I pressed my forehead against the wood, breathing shakily. He was gone. And I realized I didn't feel sadness. I felt relief. For a day or two after that knock, the hallway stayed quiet. No texts, no emails, no new burner accounts. I almost believed maybe he'd accepted it. But men like Scott don't disappear. They circle back. On the third night, my phone buzzed again. A wall of text lit up the screen. I know I hurt you. I know I gaslit you. I can't stop thinking about what we had. You were the only person who saw me for who I am. Please don't shut me out. I just need to explain myself. I stared at the message. For a brief moment, his words almost sounded like accountability. Almost. But accountability without action is just performance. And Scott had always been a performer. I didn't reply. The next morning, I found a folded note under my door. His handwriting. Messy, rushed, desperate. I can't sleep. I keep replaying our nights together. The way you'd laugh when I burned the pasta, the way you touched my hair when you thought I was asleep. I was stupid. Don't throw us away. I read it once. Then I crumpled it and dropped it in the trash. That evening, rain poured against the windows. As if on cue, another knock rattled my door. I looked through the peephole. Scott again. His hoodie was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead. He wasn't yelling this time, wasn't smirking. Just standing there in the rain, clutching another piece of paper. Wanda, his voice was barely audible through the wood. I know I don't deserve it, but please, just talk to me. I held my breath, my body pressed against the wall as if hiding could make him vanish. He slipped the note under the door and waited. I didn't touch it. Minutes stretched. Finally, he sighed, a deep, broken sound that almost pulled at something in me. Almost. Then his footsteps faded down the hall. When the silence settled back in, I crouched to pick up the note. I unfolded it slowly. I'm lost without you. You were my anchor, and I threw it away. Please, Wanda, don't let this be the end. I can change. I swear I can change. I pressed the paper flat against my knee, staring at the handwriting. For a flicker of a moment, I felt that dangerous pull empathy, the instinct to believe him, to save him. But then I remembered the truth. Empathy was always my weakness, and he knew it. I tore the note in half, then into quarters, then into smaller, sharper pieces until it was nothing but scraps scattered in the trash. I'm not your savior, I whispered into the empty room. For the first time, I smiled, not out of cruelty, not because he was hurting, but because I was free. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the streets clean. And I realized I was doing the same. Scott didn't vanish. He just shifted tactics. The apologies turned into dewandations of love. The dewandations of love twisted into accusations. One night, my phone lit up with, I'll never stop loving you. The next morning, you're heartless. How can you ignore me after everything I gave you? It was like watching him spin a roulette wheel of emotions, regret, anger, nostalgia, blame, hoping one of them would land on the version of me that would take him back. On Instagram, he posted vague black background quotes. Some people will never understand how badly they broke you, as if he were the victim painting me as the villain to whoever still followed him. I almost laughed when I saw it, because that's what it had always been, Scott twisting reality until he was the wounded one and I was the monster. The more he reached, the clearer his pattern became. I started seeing it everywhere, even in old memories. Flashbacks of past fights flooded back his fake tears whenever I set boundaries, his trembling voice as he accused me of abandoning him when I needed space. He hadn't changed. He'd just found new scripts. Day 9. I walked into my gym and froze. There he was, leaning casually against the front desk, pretending to scroll on his phone. When our eyes met, he gave this little half smile, like we were two characters in some cheesy rom-com colliding by fate. Wanda, he said, as if my name itself could undo everything. I nodded, kept walking toward the locker rooms. Wait, can we talk? I stopped. turned slowly, my voice calm, flat. About what? He shoved his hands into his pockets, trying to look humble. Everything. Us. There is no us, I said. Not anymore. His smile faltered. You really don't care. Just like that. I held his gaze. No, Scott, I care about myself now. For once, he didn't have a comeback. He just stood there stunned, like I'd spoken in a language he couldn't understand. He tried again, weaker this time. Don't you even want to hear what I've been through? I shook my head. You wanted me numb when I was hurt. Now you want me to feel something for your pain. Doesn't work both ways. His jaw clenched. So that's it. You're seriously just going to walk away? I nodded once. I already did. Then I turned and walked into the gym. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, waiting for me to look over my shoulder, to flinch, to soften. I didn't. And for the first time in a long time, I felt taller, stronger, whole. Because I had finally stepped out of the cycle. I thought rejecting him at the gym would be the end. But Scott was never one to accept an ending he didn't write himself. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a message from an old acquaintance, Madison, one of Scott's friends. We'd never gotten along. She'd always looked at me like I wasn't enough for him. Not trying to get in the middle of anything, the message read, but Scott's a mess. He's not eating, not sleeping. He keeps saying he lost the only person who ever understood him. Maybe just talk to him for closure. Closure. That word stung. For a moment, guilt washed over me. Was I being too harsh? Was I heartless for refusing to even hear him out? But then I remembered all those nights I'd begged him to listen, all the times I'd cried quietly, so he wouldn't accuse me of being dramatic. Jamie put it best when I told him. He shook his head and said, he's just running the same script. Act 1 was charm, Act 2 was chaos, Act 3 is pity. Don't fall for it, Wanda. He was right. Scott wasn't crumbling because he lost me. He was crumbling because his control over me had snapped. The texts kept coming. Not just from him this time, but from his mother's number, then his sister's. Little breadcrumbs of manipulation disguised as concern. He's not himself. He just needs one chance. Don't let him spiral. I wanted to scream. Hadn't I been the one spiraling for months while he dismissed me? Where was this concern when I was breaking? And then when sympathy failed, Scott's mask cracked. One night, as I curled up on my couch with tea, a sudden pounding rattled my door. Bang, bang, bang. I jumped, nearly spilling my cup. My heart lurched into my throat. Wanda. His voice was no longer soft or pleading. It was sharp, jagged, furious. I know you're in there. Don't pretend I meant nothing to you. I froze back, pressed against the wall. You don't get to erase me like this, he shouted, fists hammering against the wood. You told me you loved me. A month ago, you swore you wanted forever. Tears pricked at my eyes, not because I missed him, but because fear had replaced the air in my lungs. I gave you everything. His voice cracked into a roar. I trusted you with all my trauma, Wanda. I let you in. I bit down hard on my lip, gripping my phone in one hand, debating whether to call the police. Part of me wanted to yell back, you let me in so you could bleed on me and blame me for the mess. But I stayed silent. Minutes dragged. Finally, his shouts dwindled to mutters, then curses, and then silence. I didn't move until I heard his footsteps echo down the hall, fading into nothing. I sat there in the dark, trembling, my heart hammering, realizing something terrifying. Scott wasn't just trying to win me back. He was trying to break me, and I couldn't let him. Day 13. My phone buzzed at dawn. A single message, shorter than anything he'd sent before. I won't bother you anymore. I'm sorry. For the first time, I believed him not because of sincerity, but because he'd finally run out of ways to twist the story. Every card had been played, every script exhausted. He had no weapons left. I set the phone down on the table and stared out the window. The sun was just breaking over the horizon, streaking the sky with orange and gold. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel dread in my chest. I felt stillness. I thought back to everything, the gaslighting, the eggshells, the mocking smiles when I cried. I thought about how I once believed love meant waiting it out, enduring the storm until the skies cleared. But storms don't stop because you stand in them. They stop when you walk away. Scott thought I'd crumble without him, that I'd beg, that I'd let his gravity pull me back into orbit. But he was wrong. He lost me, but I found myself. I opened my windows wide, letting the crisp morning air flood in. It smelled nothing like him anymore. It smelled like freedom. Later that day, Jamie and I met at a cafe. He asked if Scott had finally given up. He, as I said, simply stirring my coffee. And how do you feel? I smiled. A small one. Honest. Like I finally reclaimed something I didn't even realize I'd lost. He raised an eyebrow. What's that? My peace. That night I stood by my window again, watching the city lights flicker below. For so long I'd been consumed by his chaos, his noise, his endless drama. But now there was just me, my quiet, my laughter returning slowly, my freedom echoing in every corner of the apartment. He thought silence would scare me. Instead, it healed me.